What's up, everybody? Welcome to this special edition of the Electric B2B show. How you doing, Zoli?
Amazing. The show that name you don't know.
Yeah, so when you have a podcast and you forget the name in the middle of the recording. So today, this is a special occasion because what happens, Zoli, is that I was chatting with a few people on the RevGenius community, and the topic of messaging came up, like how you craft messaging. And that's something
Okay.
quite often, quite a lot, right? With a few clients. And
Yeah.
so we agreed with some people that I would talk to them about our messaging. And because I'm not smart enough alone by myself, I asked you to come on board, my dear colleague.
Super flattering.
And
Thank you.
that's a good idea, right? That I brought you on board just so we could show the people of RevGenius how we craft messaging and how we create like the core principles and everything that goes into the campaigns, because messaging really is the core of everything. And for messaging, what people often forget is that it's not just a playing of words. So messaging is not a matter of coming up with the right words that will magically sell and being super clever. Messaging is about being rooted in strategy, about knowing your audience super well. Great customer insight. And in order to get it right each time and every time, what we do is that we follow a framework. The good news about this framework is that it's partly based on our experience, and it's also based on the experience of some other very smart people and proven frameworks. And we blended all of these frameworks and experiences together to deliver what we use currently for our clients.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we dive right in? Zoli, let me share the screen. All right, Zoli, what do we got here on this first tab?
Yeah, so usually what we do is we start with the ideal customer profile, which literally just means that. So it's the ideal customer that you want to target. It's your audience. And a lot of people do this. You always see with different marketing strategies and different marketing schools that they always use personas or personal profiles. But what you want to do here is be quite specific with it. So it's not about creating this vague picture of someone with, really generic details. You really want to dive into it, and you really want to specify what sort of, as you can see, industry, sub-industry, size, region, etc. it is that you want to target. Because that way, what will happen, and what we will talk about later on, is that your messaging will be much more easier to craft, and it will be much more specific.
Yeah. What do you see with companies? Like, what's a common mistake you come across when you start workshopping with them about this?
Well, one thing is that they have really broad industries, or they have really broad specifications. I wouldn't even call them specifications, but because it seems like they want to send out their message, they want to talk to everyone, which obviously you can do. But what will end up happening is that you're talking to no one, because no one specific knows that your product, your service, whatever it is that you're providing is specifically for them. So that is a big mistake that they start out with.
Okay, and are people freaking out when you start to narrow down the focus, and as a result, you're actually excluding a large part of the market? Does that ever come across as a scary process in your experience?
I think often it does. So if a company that we start to work with doesn't have a really niche down target audience that they want to talk to, obviously they have the industry usually, so they have the broad image of who they want to talk to. But if they don't have the specifics yet, and we start to exclude people, we start to ask about, okay, who are the ones in your whatever CRM, in your current customers who are bringing the most in? Who is it that you really want to target? Who have been, the super customers or whatever, however you want to call them? It can seem a bit frightening at first, I think, because they feel like, okay, but if we are excluding people, that means that we are, maybe getting less opportunities. Maybe we are leaving out people who would be paying for us or paying for our services, which obviously at first can seem frightening. But later on, usually they realize that specificity at the beginning doesn't mean that later on we wouldn't be able to, broaden the picture a bit if we want to.
Exactly. Okay. And by the way, this framework was created by Full Funnel. And this is an adaptation of Andrei Zinkovich and Vlad Blagojevich's work that we use. And can you just walk us through what these parameters stand for, what they mean?
Yeah. So most of them,
like
I
industry,
think,
some industry, that seems obvious. What about size?
Yeah, so some of these like industry and sub-industry are obviously self-explanatory, but with some of them, so like for example with size, you could be focusing at a lot of different things when it comes to size. So maybe for some companies, the number of people working there might be interesting if they want to target someone. But usually what makes sense is to check the revenue. So like the annual revenue numbers, that is a quite good specification. Also,
this really comes down to how you usually narrow down companies. So if you go into Sales Navigator and you start to look for prospects, you're a salespeople, you talk to your salespeople, how they do it, and what are the characteristics or what are the criteria by which they determine, for example, company size. Because for us, in the case of software companies, it's going to be ARR. And it's a better indicator than revenue in general. And it's a better indicator than the number of people. But for your industry, it might be totally different.
Exactly. And usually if you talked about full funnel, what Andre and Vlad usually say is that it's a wise idea to put your clients or your prospects into tiers, and then it's much easier to separate them. So you can have your tier 1 clients, your tier 2 clients, tier 3 clients, and that can be, as you said, just in general about revenue, about the size, hence the number of people working there, the number of people working at a specific department, etc., etc. So there are a lot of different specifications that you can come down to, but it's a wise idea to put them into different tiers, and you know what sort of tactic you want to follow with the different tiers. So how deep you want to go into working with them.
Exactly. Okay. And the region, that's pretty much self-explanatory. Tech stack. Okay, so for you, a lot of you tech companies, you know, what the target audience or what your target market uses that's relevant technology can be a huge differentiator. And of course, you can get this data from a multitude of places.
Yeah, so to give you an actual example, we work with a data analytics agency or a data engineering agency. And in their case, obviously, it makes sense to see if they are using like high complexity MarTech technologies, because that would mean that probably there is a necessity for data analytics or, you know, more complex data science in the company.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you're looking at what I see are the finer and more exciting subjective things, such as challenges and pain points and expertise and strategic goals.
Yeah, so that goes, I would say that goes a bit more into the personal side of the thing. So what we talked about so far has been like features of the company, you know, what is the industry like, what is the industrial environment like, but now you get down to actual challenges, pain points, so more personal things when it comes to the company that may be more specific to a certain business type.
Awesome. Okay, and then you have disqualifiers, which is huge. What's that about?
Yeah, it's a good idea to start with the qualifiers, to start with all of the different features and different aspects that make a company interesting for you. But often there are companies that might fall into the qualification part that may in some aspects be, you know, a good choice for your company. But then there are some other aspects or some other features of that business that are disqualifiers. And it's a good thing to put those down as well, to make sure that you remember those as well, so that you don't spend too much time with, you know, businesses that you will probably never work together with. And you don't just waste your resources on companies that are, when you come down to it, or when it comes down to actual long-term business relationships, it does not have a future, basically. Yeah.
Disqualifiers can be super helpful because often it's more easy to identify the red flags. Like if somebody is in our case, like they have a very sophisticated and mature marketing department with 30 people, then there's less of a chance for us to provide adequate value because we're good at building early stage marketing teams.
Yeah, exactly. And check out some of the aspects a bit up higher. Maybe there are businesses that, you know, when it comes to size, to region, to tech stack, whatever, are a good fit for us. But then if you go down to the red flags, we mentioned that they may not believe in marketing, or they may just think that they know better how to manage this themselves, and they don't feel like, an in-depth marketing will help them. In that case, there's no point in talking to them from our perspective, even though with all of the other aspects, they're a good fit for us.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can use qualitative qualifiers and disqualifiers as well. So, to put it bluntly, if you're talking to a company and they're just mindset wise, they're not wired for a solution like yours, then there's usually little point in trying to convince them right off the bat. You can nurture them, but it's pointless to go in with a sales team and targeted marketing campaigns and try to get them to think like totally differently, because it's just not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think that's especially right, or especially true when you're trying to move to a new market or trying to expand your business, because in that case you probably have a given set of resources that you want to use for that, and you don't want to waste that on companies that will not work out with you or not happen. The business relationship will not blossom.
Exactly. So what do you got here with the buying committee? And it says finalized after interviews. Goodness gracious, you actually do interviews, Oli.
Yeah. So with all of this, really how you want to start this, and that was when I said at the beginning that you want to be quite specific and you want to draw up a picture of an actual person or an actual company, and not just, someone who might work in this area and that would be a good fit for us. What you want to do is you want to talk to your current customers and you want to talk to potential customers, to prospects, because that will help a lot throughout the whole process, really. So not just crafting your message at the end, but really just defining more precisely what is it that they are looking for, why are they looking for, etc. And one part of that, and when I talked about how different marketing schools or whatever, they might define a persona different ways, but in B2B marketing especially, usually it's not just one person who makes a decision, it's usually a buying committee with different roles. So as you can see, we have a challenger, that is usually the person who will bring the idea of working together with a new company into their own company. And then we have an influencer, so those are usually the roles that might help in the decision. We obviously have the decision maker who will, at the end sign the contract or make the last part of the decision. And if you go a bit right, we also have the blocker, who can be roles, let's say a marketing role or whatever, who for any reason might not want to get into a business relationship with your company.
Like compliance, the legal team, CFOs, if you're selling any sort of marketing or sales technology, like they can be typical blockers who don't get the thing, and they just look at the numbers in their own way, and so they can come across it. So they also need to be educated and they need to be engaged, and information needs to be given to them so that they look at your solution the proper way.
Yeah, and that is a really good point. So we are not just drawing these, different roles up for fun. It's not just, okay, we know that the CFO can be a blocker, so that's something that we know. If you go back a bit to the left, what you see is we actually draw up different aspects of these roles. So we try and understand what might be the factors influencing their decision, what might be their main objections. So maybe a challenger or an influencer is actually helping you, but at the same time, they can still have, objections in working together with you. So that is a really important part of how you want to approach these companies, because you will know when you're talking to any of these roles that are of interest for you, what is it that you want to avoid talking about, what is it that you want to be laser focused on, and what might help them make a favorable decision.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the before after matrix. So now what you do here is you really laser focusing on the demographic and the psychological and the business factors that define your audience the best, and you really get into the problems. And all this helps you to do is this first part in green. It helps you to shut out the majority of the market and get you to focus on the companies where you really have a chance to do a good job with your solution. And as a result, it's going to be very easy to prove your point and make the sale faster and at a higher price point and differentiate yourself. So that's why this part is crucial. And the buying committee just helps you map out eventually what sort of content you're going to be needing to create for these different buying committee members, what their main objections are and what their risks are, and everything else. And when you get this down, you can get into the messaging. And when we start messaging, we don't just start pulling stuff out of our asses. We actually have a systematic approach to this. And this is based on a framework from digitalmarketer.com. And so one of the frameworks that they use. And we sort of adapted it to our little B2B enterprise / technology world ecosystem. And Yeah, why don't I take this, Zoli? I'll
Yeah, I
explain.
just say, like, can you explain a bit, like, what are
Yeah.
these different points and how can we use this in messaging?
Definitely, definitely. So this is called the before-after matrix. So what this does is it breaks down the transformation which your product or solution will achieve with the target market, with the target company, with your buyers. And the reason we talk about transformation is because all good communication, sales and marketing, all it comes down to is you being able to communicate the transformation that your company can help realize for your clients. So even if this goes for, if you're selling a car, you have to point out the, however minor it is, the transformation that's going to happen in the lives of your buyers. And this couldn't be more true for B2B. And transformation is very general. So what we do is we break it down. We look at the different layers, 5 different layers of transformation. One is the have, which is the obvious thing on the surface, the superficial stuff, like what you have before using our solution or using our company and what you have after using our company. So, in the case of us, you're losing opportunity, you're guessing around with marketing, you're unsystematic, and you've got a bunch of things which are negative things. And in the after phase, like after having worked with us for a couple of months, what you usually have is clarity. You have better KPIs. You have consistent operations, marketing operations. You have a marketing team that's being built and developed. And you have all sorts of good stuff, okay? So like that's one layer of the transformation that we help you realize. And then the other layer is one layer deeper. It's the feel. So what kinds of feelings did you have before working with us? And what can you expect to feel? What can you expect to experience on a subjective, on an internal level after working with us? So here we have stuff like you are, lacking confidence with your messaging. You are experiencing overwhelm and frustration due to lost opportunities. There's definitely fear of losing market share. There's the feeling of lost in the woods, the feeling of powerlessness, the feeling of driving blind when it comes to campaigns and outreach and whatnot. So these are all sorts of feelings that our target audience experiences before engaging us. And what are they feeling afterwards? Well, there's a lot of confidence. So clarity, confidence, peace of mind, and the readiness for more, and those kinds of things. And then another dimension is the average day, which is about describing and being able to verbalize what your target persona's average day looked like before your solution. So what sorts of things were they doing before engaging you, and what's their day going to look like after having worked with you or having used your solution? And in our case, it's it's a lot of shooting around in the dark, being overwhelmed with activities that yield little results, a lot of dead experiments, a lot of unsystematic marketing, lost deals, conflict with sales, misalignment with sales, and those usual political battles. And after you bring on Klear, what you have is, clear decision making, experiments that are on track and measured and reported, and it's just a more it's more fun and more relaxing, and it's just better and more productive marketing. Okay, so that's what we have in the after. Then you have something that is like even deeper in terms of psychology and even more nuanced, which is the status, because everybody wants some sort of status. They want to achieve recognition, and we're targeting CEOs and marketers, so they usually want to be viewed as a successful CEO, a successful marketer, or if they're CMOs,
someone making the right decisions.
Yes. So and right now, if they're unsuccessful, then their status is something much lower. So we want to verbalize and highlight that in our messaging as well. And then there is another last dimension, which is the good versus evil dimension, which you have to be careful with because it can often get manipulative. But if you're able to point out what sort of wrong you are helping to make right, so what sort of greater benefit you are to society, if there's anything like unjust going on in your marketplace that your presence, your solution can help make right. This is a highly emotional thing, by the way. Then you can use that. But a lot of times we just advise staying away from this one.
Yeah, so that's usually like a last resort that you can
Yeah, you got to be careful with it, but it's freaking powerful. Okay. Yeah. So at the end of the day, what's going to happen is when you fill this out, then you will have consistent messaging. You will have copy and pastable solutions for your social media posts, for your collateral and whatnot. And this is something that you would share with your sales team and your marketing team. And what that's going to result in is everybody using the same words, using the same arguments, using the same story, and talking about the same things. Speaking of story, what's next? It is the brand script, which is the third thing we help you craft and make.
Yes, after the before after matrix, which really, as you said, helps you craft more precise messaging, or really just helps you when you feel like you're not sure what you want to emphasize on. And as we said at the beginning, you know what tones you want to hit with different personas or different roles in the buying committee. Now you have a picture on how you want to present the transformation. But what you really want to give to the whole messaging is the framework of brand scripting, which is from StoryBrand, which is a great framework because it plays upon something that is ingrained in human beings, which is we just love to listen to stories. Really, we are drawn to stories because we have been telling each other stories from the very beginning, even if it was just sitting around a campfire and just telling something that happened that day. But really, it just helps you getting your message through. So it just helps you solidify what is it that you're talking about. And for that, what you need is you have to have obviously a storyline, and you have to have the different roles in it, such as the hero, the guide, what is the main problem of the story, and what is the, as you said, the before after. So what is the transformation that the hero goes through? What is the arc of the story? And what we see often, and what I think we've talked about before, you definitely have, is that companies, for one reason or another, put themselves as the main character of the story. So they see themselves as the hero of the story, which is a big miss because honestly, it's just wrong because honestly, if you think about it, when you are in the role of the buyer, so you are a customer of whatever that they are giving you, what is it that you're interested in? Are you interested in the solution of the company, or are you interested in your problem? It is always be your problem will always top the solution. Obviously, you want to have a good solution for it. In like an ideal world, you want to get into a business with a company that you actually like. But the role of the company is not the hero. The hero of the story always has to be your customer, your audience, your target. So who is it that you are trying to help? What is the problem that they are trying to get through? And that is where we start. And obviously we touch back on the ICP and the buyer persona. So from there, now we have a more defined role that we want to get our message through to, that we want to target, that we want to talk to. And they are the ones who will be in the role of the hero. So yeah, you have the hero defined, and your role is actually going to be the guide's role. So you will be the one helping the hero overcoming their problem. So this is something that we have been using, and this is something that really works. Joe, off the top of your head, can you tell of any great examples of this, or of how we use this?
Yeah, so what we do, it's very often that we use this story on the homepage. Okay, in certain cases, on certain markets, with certain products, it makes sense to take the visitor through the entire story, the entire narrative on the homepage. So on the homepage, we would have most of these elements, like we would, show social proof, we would point out the problem, we would empathize with the hero, we would do a little chest beating and to prove how we're good. We would show them the plan, which is the simple process of how to work with us. And then we would talk about how they can take action, what will happen if we work together, and what they risk if they don't take action. And in most other places in marketing and other places on the website and in sales collateral, what we'll do is we'll use bits and pieces of this. But what that's going to do is, as the user starts to be subject to your communication, as they start to consume your communication, as they start to talk to your salespeople, they're going to get bits and pieces of this story, and it's all going to build up inside their minds into a coherent story. Even if not on a conscious level, But what this is going to result in is like, oh yeah, I'm stepping into something and I'm being a part of something. And I feel subconsciously that something is going on here, something that's real coherent, that's about me. And I just trust this thing because I know it's like a movement. You know, it sort of draws me in. And this is what you want to achieve with your marketing. And that's why story is such an important part of everything we do. And it's behind, even if it's not on the surface, it's like behind our operations and like woven into the messaging so that everything like builds up into one coherent sequence.
Right. And I think what you said is really quite important to understand is that just because you have a story and you have, you know, this arch does not mean that everywhere you have to have all of the pieces of the story. So it doesn't mean that in all of your messaging you have to, you know, lay out the hero, the problem, the guide, the plan, whatever. As you said, it just means that if you build this up, and just the same with the before after me, it's something that you can, you know, get back to always, and something that can serve as a framework for the message that you want to transfer to your audience. And you want to use bits and pieces in different collateral or different platforms or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Zoli, this was awesome. And we hope that our friends at RevGenius and the community, you'll be able to make use of this stuff. And we've got something else, actually. Okay, we've got like in our planning, we usually go to KPIs, like what KPIs the company needs to be looking at. And we also have a 30-day LinkedIn action plan that we do for companies once we start working together. So they can start with LinkedIn like right out of the gate, fresh and powered up. But what's really cool is our competitor analysis framework, where we really go into and break down the messaging of our competitors. Now, we don't have time to get into this, but I almost feel like it's the awesomest part of the entire framework.
Yeah.
You know, going through the primary promise, unique mechanism, claims, proof points, and everything for your competitors, and pinpointing holes where you're able to fill in the messaging. But I think we'll do this another time. Or
let's have another discussion.
Like reach out to us and we'll do another session or whatever. This has certainly been fun. Zoli, thanks for jumping on. And we hope you are going to enjoy this, whether you're watching on RevGenius or the Electric B2B show. And see you later.
Bye-bye. See you guys. Bye-bye.